G'day, ZiggyD here, welcome back for some more Path of Exile. In this video I want to give you guys an update for my Poison Pulsar. Again, this is not a build guide, this is just an update for some of the things I've been working on with the build, some of the changes that have happened, and some of the insights that I've gleaned through my experimentation. So, you'll probably remember that in the last video I was pretty damn excited about this build. I was like, ooh, not only does it work, but it looks like it could actually work pretty interestingly. Well, I'm level 85 now, and things have only gotten better and better. Offensively, the build has been performing very well, things have been growing along very nicely as my gems level up, as I expanded onto a 5 link, and so on and so forth. And recently I've made some kind of big leaps in the build, or some big changes that are kind of pushing things to essentially the next level. This was working very well as just a regular hybrid life energy shield build. It was a bit squishy, but very fun to play, very unique, very good clear speed, I think. And now it's kind of gone to a new level because I've made the build low life, and defensively speaking, the build has actually shot up. Like, it's much better defensively speaking than what it was before I went low life, so things are going very nicely there, in addition to gaining a whole bunch more damage as well. So, I'm currently running Grace, Discipline, Clarity, and also Blasphemy Temporal Chains as my kind of aura setup. And that's one of the major benefits of being low life, right, is the ability to run a lot more auras. Typically you'll get a lot of the different aura scaling nodes, aura effectiveness, reduced mana reservation, you can run a lot of auras, and your auras, when you do run them, are much more effective. The next advantage to low life is, of course, Pain Attunement, 30% more spell damage when on low life. So this is essentially about the equivalent of another support gem, really. Like most support gems these days, most good support gems can give you something like 30% more damage, and Pain Attunement does that as well. So you essentially get another link on your skill, in addition to running those extra auras as well. Now, when I first swapped, I was running Anger instead of Grace, and it was giving me like another 2k DPS, and that was nice, and it was working pretty well. You know, I do scale the fire damage up a bit before it's converted to chaos, and then I scale the convert chaos, and it was meaning bigger poisons and bigger hits, but I was finding that damage wasn't really too much of a problem for me. It seems to be going very nicely regardless, especially because I've done some things with Abyssal Cry that I'll get into a little later, that have kind of like shot the effective clear speed of the build right through the roof as well. So I thought, I'm going to actually experiment with something that I've been thinking for a long time now, that Energy Shield and Evasion are very strong mechanics together. So the way Energy Shield works, right, you have a very large pool that you typically don't have very fast kind of like recovery on. You can't like flask up, right? Like you can't flask your energy shield back mostly as you take damage. So what usually happens is you take a big chunk of damage, then after you don't take damage for a while is your energy shield recharge. Now, my build adds something a little bit different to that as well, because of Bino's, which gives us that, as you saw in the last video, that huge amount, and you can see in the footage here, huge amount of energy shield regeneration. Now, that kind of like is very bursty. It's 2 seconds of massive amounts of regen, typically between 5 and 15k energy shield regen per second. So very bursty regen whenever I'm near a mob that's dying. Now, I feel like there's like this really strong power between reducing the amount of times you're hit and the energy shield mechanics, the mechanics associated with energy shield. So I've decided to try and experiment with that on this character. We're already running Temporal Chains, right? Temporal Chains reduces enemies' movement speed at the moment, or their attack speed, by 34%. So enemies close the gap to you, they get to you slower, so melee enemies are less likely to close in on top of you, and they swing slower, they swing 34% slower. So that's basically a 34% reduction to the overall damage you're taking. It makes it easier to dodge attacks as well, so there's some extra benefits there. Now, on top of that, I think that Evasion is potentially very strong with Energy Shield, but usually quite hard to get. But I did some math on like a level 20 Grace, and the amount of Evasion that gives, coupled with the little bit of Evasion scaling I'll have on the tree from hybrid Evasion Energy Shield nodes, and also with the aura effectiveness, which is the big important part, because that scales the base. And just standing here without any flasks or anything active, I have 6.5k Evasion, which is 38%. That alone is like a big defensive boost to the character. Now, on top of that, I'm also running a Jade Flask of Reflexes, so I got a 99% Reflexes flask here. So that essentially, because I have very little evasion, almost doubles my total evasion, in addition to providing another 3,000 flight. So when I activate this, I go to 18.5k evasion, and that's 58% chance to evade attacks. So very few attacks are going to be hitting me. Enemies are swinging slower, and most of the time, they're actually going to be missing. Now, on top of that, dual wielding, my character has 15% block, and I've decided to couple in another like complete damage avoidance mechanic, and that is Roomies, which gives you block. Now this is a granite flask, so I get a little bit of mitigation if I do get hit by something, but this, when I activate it, takes my block for my attacks up to 39%. That can go higher with the better Roomies, and 15% spell block as well, so I even get a little bit of bonus spell kind of avoidance there as well, which works out pretty nicely. So enemies are very unlikely to hit me with attacks, because I'm either going to evade it or I'm going to block it, and the occasional hit that does go through won't happen very often, right? Like Temporal trains are slowing it down. I'm going to get hit every so often. Now, what that means is, because I'm killing enemies constantly, getting massive amounts of regen as I'm jumping over the top of them, that's instantly restoring back up whenever I do take that hit, and there's plenty of time for that regen to happen. And then if that doesn't happen, so if I'm kind of like a little further away from enemies, then I take that occasional hit, and in between those hits, the actual energy shield recharge happens, refilling my energy shield. So either way, between hits, my energy shield is going to fill back up. And although I'm only sitting on 5.2k energy shield, usually you want to go for a bit higher than this, and we can grow that higher. Hopefully I can get that to like 6.5 to 7k energy shield without too many problems. That's working very nicely. Like, I'm way tankier than what I was as a hybrid build, so that addition of Grace, with all of these kind of mechanics coming together, avoidance and the regen from Binos and everything, is working out just a treat, defensively speaking. So very happy with how this is going. I'm going to push it further. There's still a whole nother Evasion energy shield cluster here I have yet to get. If I come down here, I can grab this entire Evasion energy shield cluster, which is a pretty good amount of energy shield. So that'll give me another K energy shield or so. And then also a very good amount of evasion, because I actually have much evasion scaling in the tree. I just have this nullification cluster. So getting Void Barrier as well will give us another, I don't know, like 5-10% chance to avoid attacks probably. So that should be very nice. Now the question some of you guys might be asking is, but Ziggy, how are you low life? You're not using a Solaris Lorica or a Shavran's Wrappings, right? And this isn't a build that uses Infernal Mantle to convert fire damage into chaos damage, right? As I went over in that past video, we're still using the Infernal Mantle. I didn't want to take a 25% less damage modifier in order to run like a Solaris or something like that, especially when I already had so much chaos resistance. Like, I'm already, just from like the passives that I get on the tree, a lot of the passives that have chaos damage also have chaos resistance. There's so much chaos resistance you can get on the tree, and some stuff that I even path through as well, meaning that I just had so much base chaos resistance. And I happened to have a couple items that had a decent amount of chaos res on them as well. I had these glows here, 21 chaos res, had the amulet with 10 chaos res. I can get a lot more, and that is, I think, going to be enough. Now, I've seen in the past other people doing this kind of chaos resistance low life style, and it is entirely viable. The person I kind of initially saw doing it, like the first person I saw doing it and pulling it off effectively, was Project PT. And basically, if you have like 500 to 600 life unreserved, which we're sitting at 622 life unreserved, and if you sit around the 50%-ish chaos resistance mark when you're in maps, then there's pretty much nothing that can kill you, right? And I've even been doing some testing in Monsters Poison on hit maps, and typically, you know, 10%, with 500 unreserved life, 10% of the damage that I would need, so poison is 10% of the damage, right? In order for me to take enough damage to get one-shot by chaos from Monsters Poison on hit, I need to basically get one shot anyway, so I'm going to die either way if that's going to happen. Like, they need to do enough damage to one-shot me, and then I'm not worried about the poison if that's happening, because I'm already dead. So far, it's been proving to be pretty nicely, especially because I'm running out Series Promise. I can and do need to get some more chaos resistance on gear, so there's still some fine-tuning to be done. I am a little low at the moment, so there are some like pure chaos attacks that are a little sketchy. I haven't been one-shot by anything yet, but there are a few things that are pretty sketchy, and I do run a hybrid flask, which I pop whenever I am taking that chaos damage, in addition to the Out-Series Promise, and that generally covers it. The Out-Series Promise also giving me some life leech, which helps fill back up as well whenever I attack. So I haven't been one-shot at all yet from chaos damage, haven't had too many issues, but I foresee in higher maps, unless I get more chaos res, some of those pure chaos attacks being fairly dangerous. So that's something I'm going to have to deal with. But that's something I can easily do. Like, I have a bunch of items on it that could get a lot more chaos res, or don't have any chaos res at the moment. So there's a lot I can do to improve that. And I think it should work out pretty nicely, especially because my HP unreserved total is going to grow as well. So I should end up with like 750-ish unreserved HP. All said and done by the time I'm kind of like done with this build. So with 50%-ish chaos resistance, that should be more than enough to keep me alive. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes, to experimenting with that. I'm experimenting with a whole bunch of new and interesting mechanics here, both on the defensive side of things and making this chaos res low life style going, and then this whole like poison chaos conversion from freeze pulse. This build has been one of kind of like my most mentally engaging builds to construct, and I've been having a lot of fun sort of putting it together in that regard. Now, there was one other thing that I wanted to go over, is Abyssal Cry. So I just had an unlinked Abyssal Cry before, and when the mobs explode, they poison nearby enemies, does a pretty good chunk of their damage as chaos. I scale some chaos, and I had someone do the math with me before, and we estimated it was about... So typically this does 8% of monster's life as maximum as damage, so whatever the monster's life is, 8% of that is dealt as damage in an explosion. With all the scaling I have, and the fact I'm using things like void manipulation as well, I'm doing probably more closer to like 30 or 35% of the monster's life as explosion damage around them. And then with the I've got added chaos on top of that as well, and increased AoE to increase the area of the Abyssal Cry tag, so it tags as many monsters as possible, and the size of the explosions. This is basically one-shotting every pack. I've seen very few instances where I get a pack with this and kill one of the monsters in the pack, and it doesn't create a chain reaction where it destroys the entire pack. And I got some footage of like a fractured map here, and you can kind of see how explosive that can be. It is a bit rippy on the frame rate though. When you open a lockbox and tag them with Abyssal Cry and then blow them up, the game will pause for like at least a second. So it's a bit rippy on the old frame rate, but it does the job, and nothing's left standing afterwards anyway, so it's not a big deal at all. Now, I'm pretty happy with how that's going, and then anything that is, like, this happens very rarely, but maybe like you might have a boss that you explode like a champ pack on top of. Most of the time they'll just disappear, like you'll just one-shot the boss. But if they ever do survive, they're being poisoned by a massive hit of damage, so the poison will quickly whittle them down just after that. So Abyssal Cry is very freaking strong. Holy crap, is it strong. So very happy with how this setup's working, and my AoE clear as a result is just beautiful. The only issue I was having really was some boss fights, especially if there's not many adds in the boss fight for me to Abyssal Cry or to regen energy shield off, and just running Vile Discipline sorted that out. So again, not a complete build guide or anything. There's still a lot of other stuff that I have to kind of work out, a lot of kinks to work out, a lot more testing be done on like the chaos resistance front and things like that. I'd like to try and get a 6 link and improve my gear a bit more and get quite a few more levels, but I will report back once I've done that, maybe another week's time or so, and hopefully get you guys a final build guide around that time as well. So anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the update. If you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions about the build, then leave them in the comments below. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.